Good evening, everyone. I hope my voice is clear enough. Part of it is technology, part of it is my throat. So I hope you can hear me. I don't see you clearly or hear you clearly, but should be enough. I assume that most of you follow the news, what's going on in Thailand. If not the past few months, somebody might follow or know something for the past 6 or 7 years. Since 2006, the coup, perhaps even before that. After 6-7 years, a lot of things become, in my view, a lot of things become clearer, easier to see. I mean, the first few years is a bit difficult, confusing, or we comment on the, let's say, not quite the right target. I think the past few years, things are so clear to me. But given that perspective, I don't think any expert can say with certainty that what we understand it today is like 100% sure. Perhaps in the next few years, things become even more clear than we see today. Is possible. So let's say we're talking about things, phenomenon that is changing day by day, weeks, and every month. So bear with us, bear with me. We try to understand it as we could along the way. The topic for today, I suggest that I'm going to talk about the roots of the crisis. I will follow the article that I wrote for Al Jazeera late December last year, a few months ago. If you have the opportunity to read, you will see that, I mean, I will start with that. Nothing much more than that. If you haven't read it yet, I will try to summarize. I will try to explain it as good as I can today. How I see it after 6-7 years until today, I think the root of the crisis in Thailand today, in my view, can be summarized like Science 101, which is society change, socio-economic of Thai society have changed, especially in the agrarian sector, which is a majority of people. But political system refuse to accept the change, refuse to share power, refuse those people to participate, refuse to adjust. Those are the fundamental conflict. That's why I say it's Science 101. Science 101, I mean, when the society change, if the political system doesn't change enough, there will be tension, there will be conflict until the tension and the conflict is resolved. Almost 100% resolved by the political system have to change. Even though during the process, the political crisis might happen and the old political system might resist, the new political force, the new demographic, the political demography might lose from time to time, but in the end, ultimately, political system has to change to accept the reality that socio-economic of the country, of that society has changed. In the Thai case, I think that's the fundamental that I'm going to explain in a moment, but that's the bottom line. But there is one more factor. I mean, in my opinion, the tension between the socio-economic change and existing political system, that tension or that conflict doesn't have to erupt in certain form at certain moment. It can gradually emerge, and the conflict can come in different forms. Normally, it depends on historical actuality. I mean, now speaking as a historian, it depends on concrete or actual factor at the time that can trigger the tension or the conflict between the fundamental, or you can say the structural elements, socio-economic change and existing political system. It depends on what factor at the time, in that moment, in that context that trigger the tension, make it explosive. In the Thai case, I believe that factor, or I would say those factors are, on the one hand, Thaksin, on the other hand, the crisis of succession for about the monarchy. So those are elements that make up the current explosive crisis. Socioeconomic change, resistance by existing political system that refuse to adjust, refuse to acknowledge the reality that society has changed. The trigger that make it happen or explode in the past few years is the fact that the person the force in power is Thaksin and his people on the one hand, and on the other hand is the monarchy is coming, the current reign is coming to an end, and succession is not smooth. Okay, I will talk step by step about those four factors. Socioeconomic change, first of all. By now, I believe that many of you have read or have listened, have heard a lot of talking about the change in Thailand, especially in the agrarian sector, since the 1980s. Thailand, since the time of I was born, I grew up 50, 60 years ago, has changed so much fundamentally. The first time during when I was very young, during Sarit time, that the modernization, the industrialization, creating the huge force of the middle class under the military regime. So then the middle class force at the time demanded participatory political system, demanded the political system that allowed them to participate, that allowed them to have a voice. That leads to fighting against the military rules. Thai people in general was born and grew up during those periods, about 20, 30 years period. We thought that democracy only means that the fighting against the military. But to step back and take a look in the longer term, in longer historical perspective, we see that the fighting among the new political force at the time, the middle class, urban middle class, against the military, it's just one phase or one wave of democratization. Now, since the 80s, what happened slowly and mostly under radar? I mean, we didn't see it. Even scholars didn't see it, didn't realize it until real recently. It's a change in the agrarian sector, or I should say more accurately, scholars and business people recognize the change in the agrarian sector, but we didn't recognize that it have impact to the change of political demography, to the change of the political force in Thai society have changed as a result or as a consequence of that agrarian sector change as well. As you may know, anybody still have the kind of imagination, the image of the rural sector or agrarian sector in Thailand as a very poor, isolated, peaceful, a kind of nostalgic image. That's nostalgic. That image changed since the late 80s, since the mid 80s perhaps, with export-oriented economy, with a lot of impact because of the economic changes since the 60s, 70s. By the 80s, the agrarian sector changed a lot. By late 80s, I think 1989, the majority of Thai population was no longer in the rural area. No, they're urban. By late 80s, perhaps 88, 89, gross domestic product in Thailand, which before that, the majority of Thai GDP is agrarian products. By the end of the 80s, it's no longer agrarian products. It's no longer agrarian sector. So population live in the semi-urban or urban sector, or at least have half of their life, have many months of their life back and forth between the rural sector because the rural living experience and the urban one. In terms of income, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of products, in terms of the significance to the country's economy, agrarian sector have become the minority in terms of weight into economic products, not because population is smaller, no, but because population and agrarian sector moved to the urban sector. They became a kind of semi-urban lifestyle, ways of life experience. They become actually more global. If anybody have a chance to listen to Professor Charles Kai or have a chance to read his new book, just came out, I think last month, on the changes in the rural areas, rural society in the Northeast, in Isan. He explained the process in the past about 20, 30 years, that those villagers, those people living in the Isan used to be the most remote, most, I would say, some people might have nostalgic image as a most backward, most uneducated population in the country. They have changed. Professor Kai even talked about them today as a globalized village, because they live in a kind of way of life that connected to that connects to the urban lifestyle, that connect to information, not even urban, but global. A few more statistics to tell you. I'm not good. I have to admit that I'm not good at economy. I'm not good at economics. So I'm not even a good economic historian. But let's say this information I gather from a number of research in recent years that report along the same line, either Thai scholars or scholars from the outside, either Andrew Walker or among professors in Thammasat and Jula of economics and anthropology department, report the same thing, the changing along the same line. A few more figures I'd like to add is that by early 2000, the percentage of people who remain illiterate in Thailand, I mean, somehow they don't finish primary education. By early 2000, that number is 0. Okay, we know that statistics in Thailand cannot be 100% trustworthy, but at least the trend is so obvious that majority of people are literate, got primary education at least. The percentage of child mortality, which used to be high in the rural areas, by early 2000, down to 1%, which means they have access not only to health care, they have access to information, and in general, population in general, we can speak, generally speaking, are much better educated, much better informed. They have access to at least adequate public health. Those change a lot the rural society. In the past, 30, 40 years ago, a lot of educated people too much concentrated in a few urban major cities, especially the best, I mean, people know Bangkok is not just a city. Bangkok is a primate city. I mean, the difference between Bangkok and the secondary city is so huge, the gap is so large. In the past 20 years or so, the gap is reduced to the point that the so-called provincial, almost every provincial city in Thailand are not small anymore. The small provincial city in Thailand, maybe we can't say it's small anymore. A lot of cities, major cities in provincial areas, population about 1 million or more. So, or at least hundreds of thousands. So urban sector is large, is expansive, expanding everywhere in the country. People who are educated, finished undergrad or finished sometimes a master's degree, they stay in their hometown. They stay in the hometown. Economic growth happened not only in Bangkok, but in so many provincial cities around the country. They are closely connected with the rural sector in their region. This is, again, it's not my research. I just read books. I just read the things that people talk about. Then the next step is that what the changes have effects or have changed political behavior of those people in rural sector or those people in semi-urban, semi-rural areas. I think the book that explained this well in English is Andrew Walker's Political Peasants. Came out in 2000, I think 2012. But he has talked in so many places. He explains the way the political behavior of people started to change. They're not waiting for the handouts. They're not waiting for social workers. They want opportunity. They seek for opportunity. They seek for funding. They are more entrepreneurial. They are willing to take a risk. They are much better informed. They form the idea, they conceptualize what their benefits, what's good, what's not good for them. Then they seek out opportunity. In a way, I would suggest that there used to be a saying, and a lot of people still believe this, that the policy of Thaksin and his parties, whatever it names, successful, those policies successful because they bribe, because they bought people, because they propaganda, because they lure people. Why don't we think it's possible that the other way around, in the sense that those societies, those conditions have changed in the rural sector. People seeking for opportunity, people seeking for funds. Thaksin and his people just capture. I'm not talking about they are good or not good people, because the good and not good defined in different ways, depends on your perspective. But one thing we have to say that they're smart enough to know what people, especially in the rural sector or in the semi-urban, semi-rural sector, want at the time. That's why instead of saying that the 1 million baht per village fund is successful because they lure people, because they're cheating, because they, because they make an empty promise, so on and so forth. Maybe we can see that it's successful because people in those rural sector are ready to take a risk, to take opportunity provided by the government, by Thaksin government, by whatever government after that, which throw in money more as long as they have good projects. And as you know, many research already confirmed that the saying that the money that thrown into the rural sector would be lost, would create more debt. It turns out for many factors, debt in the rural sector is much lower than debt in the urban sector, debt by the middle class, because those people generally pay back. Anyway, my point is more like I want to talk more about the change of political behavior or mode of their politics. That's why I talk about these people, not just rural people anymore. Just they are changing demography. They're changing political demography. Okay, what happened in Thailand is that for a long time, it is a bureaucratic polity to some extent, to more or less extent. They remain very much centralized. The main mode of political system is to rely so much on the bureaucracy. And Thai bureaucracy, as we all know, are very centralized. It means that one of the reasons why those people in the rural areas in the past, they did not care about politics. Partly maybe because they're uneducated. Yeah, that's true, possible. But partly because during those times, politics, national politics, didn't really matter to them. But when national politics become much more, matters more and more, during 20, 30 years of elections after elections, what happened is that politicians that we hate, politicians that we think or we believe are maybe true. I would agree with a lot of people who say that those politicians, they're corrupt. But part of their corruption, I'm not going to argue against that. I think politicians in around the world have that kind of quality that it's one of the problems. But another part of their characteristic is that politicians in Thailand help local people bypass the process of the centralized bureaucracy. They help bring in more funds. They help, I would say that politicians become another form of decentralization, put it that way, by many means, by many forms, such as bringing funds from the central government, help bringing the voice of the local people, having larger share of the national budget, for example. We always complain that politicians like a big shot like Banhan Silapa Acha, Sanan Khajon Prasad, they're corrupt, they're big shot. They also they kind of bring in more budget to their province. We tend to think that negatively, but if we think another way, I'm not saying that what I'm going to say is always correct or let's say 100% correct in every way, but let's say think different ways and we try to see different angles. When they do that, in a way, they bring a larger share of the budget to that province, right? Suppose there are more and more politicians like that. And the fact is that there are more and more increasing number of big shots like that who are able to bring a larger share, larger piece of pie to their provinces. The one who got less or the one whose pie gets smaller was Bangkok. Bangkok used to have many mega projects, even now still have many mega projects in the name of national interest. Not many people complained. Now many provinces start having their pie, start having their share bigger and bigger. Bangkok and major urban cities complain because ability of those politicians to bring in resource to their provinces at the expense of major cities, especially Bangkok. That's what politicians in Thailand have done. I'm not saying that they do not corrupt. That's a different story. That's a different story. That's a different thing. But the fact is also that they make their share of the national budget larger. They help, we might say, they help bringing the voice of their constituents heard in the national level and in Bangkok. That's how they can get their share of the budget. They help bringing projects, funds, formally, informally, privately, or by formal government sector, public or private sector, more and more to their provinces. That's how we can see, that's why not just a national economic policy, but also this economic development, this economic growth, despite corruption, despite so many things, unsatisfactory, not quite to the right, to the normal standard. But let's say, I mean, despite lots of corruption, the fact is also that those economic development, those economic growth, especially rural sector, some part of it because of economic policy of every government, not credit to Thaksin alone, no way, no way. The change started since the 80s, at least since the mid 80s. So many governments, but also partly because politicians, not Thaksin's party alone. No, no. Banhan, Democrats, every party contribute to this, contribute to the change in the agrarian sector by bringing more and more resource down to the local and rural level. Everybody contribute to this. This is I mean, history is never black and white. This is the process I try to explain not in so black and white term. Despite those kind of ugly corruption process, the same process also create a consequence that benefit a lot more people that in a way that even scholars, we didn't see it clearly until years later. Now, given this kind of process, rural society, people in the rural sector, or to be more precise, people in the semi-urban, semi-rural sector, see more and more benefits of electoral democracy. Do they know that there is corruption? I believe they know. Do they care? I believe they do care, like everybody else. But do they see benefits of politicians? Definitely. Definitely. And in this last particular point, people in Bangkok might not see it. People in Bangkok, or let's say the upper middle class, normally we don't have to rely on those politicians. Think about, especially those who are familiar with Bangkok life, which I guess most of the Thai in that room, in this room at this moment, I mean there in Berkeley, who are familiar with life in Bangkok. To what extent we care or we do or we have to rely on Bangkok politicians? Not much. When we have concern, we report to the media because national media is pretty much Bangkok media, either TV or newspapers, right? Either TV or newspaper. We have problems, we report to them. We have so many organizations, government and civic organizations to report, to help us. We don't have to rely on politicians from Bangkok. Politicians from Bangkok play national politics. They don't need to rely, they need to rely on us in terms of vote. But our decision, Bangkokians, our decision to vote for who in Bangkok, largely not because we know the person, but largely because we kind of look at general trend in national politics. Politicians in the rural areas, in many semi-urban, semi-rural sector, whether or not they are good or to what extent they are good, at least they have to be in touch with their constituents in much larger extent, much higher degree than Bangkokians and their politicians. Electoral democracy and politicians, those corrupt, those crook politicians, become the mode of the way or the mode, the political mode for those people to have a larger share of power. That's why they like electoral democracy. And this is the fundamental reason why vote buying, which used to be careful, I use the right word, which used to be rampant in the early and mid 80s, started to decline. The latest research says that vote buying doesn't have much impact. I would draw your attention to a research in 1995 by William Callahan, now at University of Manchester in England. He lived in Thailand during the 90s. By 1995, vote buying began to have no effect or have minimal effect. He published a paper in 1995, which means he did his research in early 1990s. He found that vote buying did not have much effect as people thought. The reason is simple. On the one hand, people realize more and more the significance of right person, I mean, the politician who can bring benefits to their society, their locales. And another reason is that vote buy is a process. The process of vote buying itself, in the end, it makes, how to say, it cancel its own effect. In the process, I would explain in brief, which is the following. When you start buying vote, and when people still don't care, you can buy vote. People accept the money and people vote for you because they don't care the result, because no effect. Whatever national politics is doesn't have effect to them. Whenever national politics have more effects on them, have more impact on their life, they start to rethink. They take the money, but they don't need to vote to people who gave them money. Okay, that's the first point I already explained. But the point I tried to explain the internal mechanism of vote buying, which in the end it defeats itself, is the following. The first they pay money, they buy vote. But whenever it reaches a point that every party pay money, every politicians of every party pay money to the, let's say, more or less, sometimes the amount doesn't have to be equal, but amount more or less similar. People stop voting for the person who pay most because it doesn't matter much. People take money from all, but the decision based on other factors, not on the amount of money, the amount that they receive, because people take the money from everybody. Once you get to that point, politicians still have to pay, but by that time, which is around the mid-90s, they pay for not to lose. They pay for not to lose. So to make sure that people don't blame them for being too stingy. People don't blame them for not generous enough. But they don't pay because they realize that even they pay, people don't vote for them. People vote for them because other factors. So in fact, vote buying started to have less and less effects since the 1990s. Since the 1990s, it reduced effect long time ago. So once you get to 2000, Thaksin, the first election in 2000 or 2001, once he come up with policy, Bangkokian and a number of academics call him a kind of vote buying, by policy. By vote buying, by using the policy to buy vote. Is that what politicians everywhere in the world does? Thinking of a policy that will benefit people. For people who think about their own benefit, is that what democracy is? Perhaps only to Bangkokian and educate a number of educated people in Thailand. Think about democracy as a kind of ideal or kind of a utopian system that people don't care their own benefit. If you look at democracy everywhere, in the US by now, you should, if you're not familiar yet, maybe you can learn from it. People care about their own benefit. With the assumption that if as long as people care their own benefit, up to a certain point, we have to care about other people as well, because nobody can live alone. No profession, occupation, or certain segment of the society can live alone. We have to protect our benefit. We have to voice our opinion from the standpoint, from the point of view of our own benefit. And then we share that voice, we share that opinion, we allow it to go into negotiation, to peaceful negotiation, peaceful fighting, peaceful conflict, peaceful competition, peaceful contest with other voice, with other people who also care their own benefit and who disagree or have different opinions from us. This is it. As long as different locales in Thailand, different provinces, different districts, different villages care their benefits, voice it out, and as long as they contest, they compete, they fight peacefully within the rule of the game, because their voice could be the same as majority of people. Their voice could be minority and other people share similar opinion, then they lose or they won. But as long as they care to voice out, don't have to shy, and think about their own benefit, think about their own interest. It's not a bad thing as long as they fight within the rule of the game, in the rule of democratic process. So this is the reason that people think about their own benefit, and then money that politicians pay them start having less and less effect since the 90s. Long time ago, at least about 2 decades ago, vote buying start having reduced or no benefit, to the point about by the time Thaksin came to power, it has no effect. In fact, vote buying didn't have effect before that in certain places. The places that we blame, people like Banhan or those big shots, many researchers found that he did not have to pay cash. He did not have to buy votes. It happened before that. By 2000, politicians still pay money up until the latest election, but the money becomes less and less effective, to the point that the latest research, Ajahn Pasuk and other people confirmed that it has less than 5% cares about or vote according to, vote because they get money from certain politicians. 95% of the voters, they vote because of other factors, not because of money. Okay, the first point may be a bit longer. I take a lot of time, sorry. Okay, but I explained the first point about political change, socio-economic change. And at the same time, I think I have explained already to some extent about the electoral mode. Democratization is good for the new political demography. Electoral democracy is good for those people, the majority of people who are in the semi-urban, semi-rural area. Now, I'd like to explain more of the second factor, which is the political system. Okay. Electoral democracy in Thailand so far, nobody can say that it's perfect. No, it's far from perfect. A lot of people can complain with I think it's justified complaint. It's justified complaint that it's not even good. But let's say, in my opinion, it's hard to say what is good, what is bad in absolute terms. We can have our own benchmark. We can have our own ideal. We can, and we should. And we should fight to try to improve democratization. We should fight to try to improve the quality. We should fight to try to make it better. I agree. I agree. But on the other hand, to me, this is my opinion. You don't have to agree. Democracy has no final benchmark. Democracy in a historical process. I'm not talking about democracy as a fixed utopian ideal. I'm not talking about that. I can have that like you have. I can have that ideal. I can have benchmark. But I have the other view. If we think democracy in terms of political process, what is democratization? Put it that way. Not what is democracy. What is democratization? In my view, is a process by which more and more people have more share in the exercise of political power. To put in another term, democratization is increasing participation of the increasing larger number of population. Democratization is increasing participation by larger political demography. That's it. If we don't measure democracy by a benchmark, by the fixed ideal quality, we measure democratization. We measure and we want democratization, mean the process that leading to something, leading to such an ideal. The process we should expect is a process in which larger and larger political demography can participate and have participation in exercise of political power, have the largest share of power. That's it. That's how I see democratization. Unfortunately, in Thailand, democracy is prachatipatai. Democratization, I'm not sure what's the exact word. We usually call it prachatipatai, the same word. So we can't make distinction between the benchmark, the ideal democracy, and the process towards democracy. Towards such an ideal, the process which I call democratization. To me, we should measure the satisfied democratization or not by the process in which more and more people can participate or have more share of political power, such as decentralization. That seems to be the thing that everybody from every camp, every color agree. Decentralization is the more autonomous, decision-making power in the down to the provincial, down to the rural, down to local level of government, the better. That seems to be the thing that everybody agree in Thailand at the moment. That's a form of democratization that everybody agree. Now, back to our subject. Given that kind of society, I mean, changing rural society, changing the political demography, Thai political system hasn't changed much in the past 30 years. I used to call it, and this phrase doesn't catch because it's not quite, it's a bit awkward phrase. I call it post-October 1973 democracy. So it's a bit long and awkward phraseology. Post-1973 democracy. What is post-1973 democracy? This is a bit long. For more details, not advertisement, but I urge you to read my article in 2008, Journal of Contemporary Asia. The title of the article is Toppling Democracy. I explain the process in that article. I explain history of that democracy and the characteristic of that democracy in that article. Primarily, it's a form of democracy that started since October 14, 1973, which is one, the gradual retreat of military power. The period so-called semi-democracy from 1973 to 1992, roughly, is the period when the military is still dominant, but gradually reduced power to the point that in 1992, they retreated. They're no longer dominant. Before 1973 is dominant military rule. I'm not going to go to details because details, they are much more like up and down a bit, not steady. And also another thing is that if we go to more details, we have to explain the first 15 years after 1932 revolution, not as part of the military rule, even though a huge long period of that is under General Pibun Songkram, but I'm not going to go into details. But let's say before 1973, to a large extent, is under military regime. From 1947, from the coup in 1947 to uprising in 1973, the monarchies was another political force that tried to assert themselves to political dominance. But throughout those periods, 47 to 73, they are largely under the military dominance. I use the word monarchies in plural term because please understand that I am not talking about the monarch. I am talking about the monarchies. The monarchies are a political force comprised of so many people, both royals and non-royals. For example, General Blame, who is not royals. No, he's common people like you, like me. But he's a monarchist for sure. Okay, the monarchists are people, royals and non-royals, whose benefit enlarge, expand to the point that their benefits rely on the strength and the dominance of the monarchy institution. Okay? I speak slowly, hope you can follow me. By the way, I don't see much because the room is dark, so I just guess what I don't see reaction much from the room. Anyway, I say it again. The monarchies are people whose benefit And by the word benefit, it could be material benefit, down all the way to ideology. I mean, people who believe that it's best, the country is best, if the country is under the dominance of the monarchy or the monarchies themselves. The monarchies prefer the political system with a good king, or a king become the anchor for their power, for their dominance. This political system, the monarchies lost power in 1932. For 15 years, they're out of politics until 1947. They reassert themselves to politics. They are partner with the army in the coup in 1947, but only for a few years. Then they were kicked out by the military again in 1951 or 52. Since then, they tried to reassert themselves, especially under military rule of General Sarit Thanarat. The monarchists and the monarchy tried to reassert their influence throughout the late 50s, 60s, and early 70s. Only until 1973, with collaboration, not to a large extent, not knowingly. In a way, we can say that who used who, I'm not sure. But let's say, together with popular democracy, which revolts against military regime in October 14, 1973. That is also the same moment that gave the opportunity for the monarchies to emerge, to start it, to reassert their influence or their power. That's why I call democracy since 1973 to 1992 is an overlap between the three major forces, we might say. On the one hand, popular democracy try to, I mean, it's still a baby, try to grow up. Okay, the second factor is the military try to maintain their dominance, but they are losing. And the third one is the monarchies try to reassert themselves, and finally, eventually, in 1992, they became dominant. This is what the political system the country have since since 1973 mean the kind of electoral democracy with the monarchies on the upper floor. I have explained in so many places that the phrase in English or in Thai that the monarchy above politics, they twist the meaning. Above politics used to mean, and we thought that, many people still think it means beyond, above and beyond, meaning they don't involve with politics. That's not true. In my view, since 1973, the monarchies tried to reassert itself to become an upper floor or super, or let's say, how to say, a political system. Another political power above the formal politics, meaning there is a formal politics. Electoral democracy, parliamentary democracy, and that's what we know. That's what we pay attention to. What we didn't know, what we didn't pay attention to is that above that, informally, is the dominance or the power of the monarchies, with the anchor or having the monarchy as a critical element to maintain as long as the monarchy as an institution is popular, and people loyal to the monarchies rely on that kind of legitimacy, rely on that kind of influence to assert their power over normal, formal political system. In other words, every government since 1973 to 1992, they don't have full power. Every elected government never have full mandate from people. They have to deal with two political forces above them. Every elected government have to deal with the military and the monarchies between 1973 to 1992. And after 1992, when the military almost fully back to the barrack, I mean, they are fully retreat, every elected government still have to deal with the dominating power of the monarchies, even though in formal terms they are elected. They get the mandate from people. In fact, no government in Thailand ever have full mandate from people. They have to care of the monarchies. Now, the last factor, I take too much time already, the last factor, which I'm not going to talk too much because he doesn't have a lot to say, but and also it's risky. It happened that by about 2000, this is after 1992, right? The political system is a system under dominance of the monarchies. System under dominant monarchies. And the monarchies, intervene in politics, in the system, in the policy, in important decision making, in the reshuffle of the major positions in the bureaucracy more and more. This is a secret only for people who didn't know. People who know politics know that so many and increasing number of positions, important positions in Thai bureaucracy need approval from the monarchies. For example, army chief. That's why army chief become a tradition. They can speak without shame that they belong to the king because they rarely or never belong to the government. They're never loyal to the government because they've never been. But much more than the army chief. Key important in civil servants, such as irrigation department, a few major departments in interior ministry, in treasury, in finance ministry, a few key important positions in the bureaucracy that has, let's say, can bring benefit or can bring, I mean, can make a good or bad to the benefits of the monarchies. Again, benefits here means material all the way through ideological. Those important positions need approval from the monarchies. Anybody who are familiar with Thai political gossip, political system, we know this. This become a fact of life, become a fact of politics. This is what I call royalist democracy. Royalist democracy is an oxymoronic term. I know it's a contradiction in term, but it's a democracy, electoral democracy, parliamentary democracy with the monarchies on top of the formal political system. And they exert their power more and more. Part of the reason they can do it, because I add, and I'm going to talk about another issue related to things about the monarchy. Because in the past 40 years, before 1973, roughly speaking, about the mid-60s to the present time, Thailand has been under the increasing, the growing, the larger and larger culture of hyper-royalism. I mean, the condition that people are so, how to say, the loyal, the faith to the monarchy, as if he was not, at least he were not a human being, is not like this scale, this degree. No, we all misunderstood that it has been like this for 700 years since Sukhothai. No. No. There could be some other times, but it's not regular, it's not normal. It just happened to be in the lifetime of 80-90% of Thai population today. We never know life under different condition of royalism. 80-90% of Thai population today, we live under hyper-royalism in the past 40 years. I mean, even people who are 60, 70 years old, I mean, they grew up, they became adult, they became, no, they are aware of lifestyle, they're aware of livelihood, they're aware of the affairs of the country. When hyper-royalism increasingly influential, when they start hating, they mean they don't like, they become more and more dissatisfied with the military. They look at the monarchy as alternative to the military. And the monarchy that is the alternative to military become more and more the linchpin of royalist democracy. And they thought that that is a good democracy. Think about it, the kind of rituals, every year annual rituals that involve about the monarchy, invented tradition. Most of them invented when? From 1976. Yeah, most of them invented from 1976. A few major ones invented from mid-1960s, many more numbers from 1976, which is another high time of hyper-royalism that resulted in the massacre on October 6, 1976. Only from that year that we have Father's Day, Mother's Day, and all kind of celebration every year, sometimes more than one a year. The kind of royalism that we know it is new. Only the past 30, 40 years, especially the past 30 years, not longer than that, which happened to be the whole life of many of you in that room, many Thai in that room today. We never know, we thought it's like that. It's always like that for hundreds of years. Not true. It just happened in the past 30 years. The kind hyperbolic, how to say, hyperbolic presses, when we talk about the monarchy, when put the kind of the public behavior about the royalism, we have to behave the same way. The kind of enforcement of lèse majesty law never happened like this before. It just happened not before 30 years, not longer than 30 years ago. Hyper-royalism and the increasing power of royalist democracy goes hand in hand. Now, hyper-royalism doesn't work if the monarch is not a good person. If the monarch is not acceptable by people. Hyper-royalism is not tradition. Hyper-royalism is not historical phenomenon. It's not historical culture. Hyper-royalism is a modern culture. As part of modern culture, it's a public culture. It's a culture that rely on or have to involve public acceptance, have to involve public participation as well. Public have to accept, public have to participate in producing and reproducing hyper-royalist culture. The public will participate on the condition that the monarch, on the condition they believe that the monarch is a good person, is a person that they are willing to be faithful, to be loyal to. By 2000, we all know that the health of the current king is not uncertain. Nobody ever say that, never say with certainty that when he will or he will not die, his health is good, is not good, is not so good, is okay. Nobody know. But in that condition of uncertainty around after 2000, I'm not sure exactly what year, but after 2000, everybody in the political system, even in public, knows that the future of the current monarch is uncertain. And not just uncertain in whatever year, in any year. Nobody can predict whatever happened tomorrow, next week, 10 years. I mean, since sometimes in early 2000, 2003, 2004, I'm not sure, that kind of uncertainty started. It happened to be the time when the political power is under Thaksin, who capture the change, who understand the change in rural society and take advantage of condition. That's what I mean. Instead of seeing him as buying people, we should think that the socio-economic change become the condition that he can be successful. If Thaksin emerged 20 years ago, he would have failed. Impossible. This kind of policy would not work. It worked only in the condition that rural society have changed. So that's how he can be successful. But of course, he must be smart enough. He must know people enough. He must have mechanism to know and have kind of idea. He must be good enough, or if we don't like the word good, he must be clever enough, at least clever enough to initiate, to create such and such policy that win the heart and mind of a lot of people. So royalist democracy faced uncertainty at the same time that electoral democracy is getting out of hand from the monarchies. That is the ultimate. I'm not trying to belittle other factors, including Thaksin's abuse of power, Thaksin's corruption. I put them all. But those are the factors that a lot of you might have heard. What I'd like to put here is that because the monarchists realized that the uncertainty about the change of the reign, the transition from one reign to another, which is not the change of person, but the whole faith of royalist democracy, which relies on the condition of certain quality of the monarch, is under uncertainty, anxiety of the uncertain future among the monarchies is so high that the same moment that political power that became most powerful is people like Thaksin. Electoral democracy was getting out of hand. From then on, mid-2000 until today, the big picture is still this picture. The tension between changing political demography and the royalist democracy try to maintain the dominance even though or under uncertainty about the monarchy. What changes? A lot more details. I'm not saying that those details are not important, and many things are not, even minor details are important important things that we need to care. Let's say we have to acknowledge that. In my view, when people say that the current crisis is just a fighting among elite, I disagree. It's true. It's a cliche when we say that all political conflict are conflict about elite. That's always true. That's always true. But in this current crisis, it's not just elite. In a way, the elite fightings are the tip of the iceberg. Elite fightings are the top or superficial layer. The fundamental is a changing demography, changing society, changing Thai society versus the resisting political system under royalist democracy. In concrete terms, it shows up, it appears in the forms of the fighting among the elite, which is not unreal. It is real too, but that is a concrete phenomenon that we seem to see easier for us to see, easier for us to capture. That is the elite group. I emphasize this last point because I want to say that it's not just elite fighting. One fact that we need to care is the fact that it just happened that both political forces, I mean, the political forces, the people behind the changing demography and the people behind the resisting, the stubborn, the obstinate political system, both sides have a huge number of population behind them. Both sides involve a large number of people, a huge size of public. I wouldn't say that those public who support either side, yellow or red, are just a pawn, are just people who are ignorant, are just people who are fool. I disagree with that. Always in every politics, there are people who are ignorant, who are fool, who didn't know much, of course. But there are people who know, huge number of people who know, and huge number of people whose benefit happen to correlate with the political system, with the political aspiration of either side. That's what I mean. Even they don't have to know, they don't have to understand exactly like Thongchai understand. No, they don't need to. Looking from their point of view, they realize that there are a lot at stake in the political struggle today, explained in their own ways, as much as they can, by being able to explain their benefit, the political system to their liking. Whenever they can do that, they are no longer a pawn. No, they are no longer ignorant. They take part in political struggles. This time we have to acknowledge that both sides have a huge number of people on their side. Which one is bigger, larger? Then we can debate, we can argue forever. I'm not saying neutral. I just want to throw in the fundamental is those elements down to, I mean, socio-economic change, resisting political system, and uncertainty, the anxiety over the changing of the monarchy, and those are the structural or the fundamental factors that that is let's say that is that is a structure below the concrete phenomenon of the color politics, of the polarized politics, or some people might say of the elite politics, which I disagree. It is much more than elite, much more at stake than which elite group. It's much more complex than just the elite group. I think I take too much time. I should stop here. Sorry, I don't hear. I yeah, I don't hear you. Sorry. Maybe you have to speak in front of the machine. Yeah, now clear. Sorry, not clear. If people ask, you can repeat the question to me, or ask them to come forward to the closer to the computer. Uh-huh. Yep. 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 92 uprising. 1992 uprising. Before that, we can say that the military gradually retreated from 1973 up and down, but the general trend from 73 to 92 is decreasing power. They gradually retreated. We can say that 1991 coup is what to call it in English, the last grasp, the last attempt by the military to come back, and they failed. They failed. The reaction in 1992 forced them. I mean, they're under defeat. The phenomenon we saw on TV that the king called for Jamlong and Suchinda, those two generals, to what's the word in English? I mean, to his audience, sit on the floor, having the king sitting on the sofa and preaching the two adults, almost like adult preaching to children. That picture, that scene, it's symbolic, tells a lot of things. Symbolically, it means that, hey, you should know who is the boss here. The monarchy has a final say. Those people who are struggling, fighting each other, should find a way to stop fighting. It sounds good, but in the context of military retreat, in the context from 73, popular democracy is on the rise. Parliamentary democracy is on the rise. It's not in retreat. The military, on the other hand, from 73 to 92 is in retreat. The direction, the historical direction, the historical trajectory of both forces are in reverse. But, I mean, between the military and the popular democracy, but it's clear that it's the royalists, it's the monarchists who have the most and the final say above other two. I didn't hear it, sorry. Can you repeat the question? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did I say that? I keep using the word monarchist, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I use the word monarch only a few times. I use the word monarchist. What the relationship between the monarchist and the monarch? It's like, does the Constitution of the United States have to say about everything, every running, every operation of the government at this time in the United States? No, right? The Constitution is like the anchor, it's like the pillar that hold the system together. That's how we say that this country is democracy, such and such law under what, blah, 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 the whole political system under the guidance or under the system, under the principle of the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't have to have a say in everything. No. In comparison, think about the monarch. Think of the monarch in that way. But slightly differently. The monarch is not a paper, the monarch is a human. So he may involve or interfere from time to time, depending on what issues. Lot of things we don't really know. Lot of things we know long after the fact. Lot of things become rumor, which is true, which is untrue, mixed records of those rumors that the monarch involved. Some are true, some are not. But think about that the monarch is both human to interfere and both a kind of pillar for the whole system. Then you have the pillar, you have to have a so-called the perceived good monarchs, moral authority, in order to have a powerful royalist democracy, in order to have the monarchists to operate. That's it. So the monarch in this current crisis, what has he done? What has he done? I have to say honestly, sincerely, I don't know. Not because of I'm afraid of the law. True, that's also true too. But the fact is also that I don't know. It's too soon to say. A lot of things that we never know at the time, we learn later. What is the fact? What was the fact? I believe that not so long after this, we will know the fact. But right now, we did not know. There are a lot of gesture, a lot of signs, a lot of gesture, a lot of signs. Not accusation, not allegation from people who don't like the monarchy. No, no. A lot more signs, a lot more gesture by the royalists or the monarchists themselves pointed that they take such and such action because they got approval from the monarch. Now I say it clear. Those gestures are from the monarchists themselves because they need to claim legitimacy. They need to claim that they are doing this and that because they got the green light or because they got the support. To be frank, we don't know. We don't know that they got it real or not real, but they are the ones who make the gesture that they got approval from the monarch. Those examples are like the coup in 2006, which is the beginning of the whole crisis today. Yep. Sorry, under the what? Uh-huh, uh-huh. For the first question, do the kings still have the power? The power of the monarch himself is never formal. Keep that in mind. Never formal. He has so much. You might say, you might use another term, which I know that I use the term word power instead of using the term influence, because I want to mean that. I want to mean power. I just don't mean influence. But that power is based on influence, based on moral authority, meaning the influence or the moral authority is a constant. It stays there all the time, which allow him to exercise actual power from time to time. But as long as it is not formal, it is not formal. And there are certain restrictions in the formal legal provision as well. That's why in 2006, when people call him, people call a request or people urge him to use the so-called Matra 7, Article 7 according to Constitution, he refused that. And he said that if he used it that way, it become, what's the word in English for more? It becomes a kind of careless. A kind of careless, because he always have some restriction, at least in public eyes. He has to be careful. I never say that. I say monarchy is on top of the non-political system. It doesn't mean they can do anything at will. No, no, no. There's certain restriction. It's a kind of everything. It's like even foreign politics, they don't have full power. Even Thaksin, they don't have full power. No, if they have full power, he wouldn't have been in this kind of situation himself. Every political force have some restriction informally and formally. So the king, do he still have? The king can exercise power based on his enormous influence, based on his enormous moral authority. Only he has to be careful. He has to be careful, care about restriction, and care about political situation. Keep in mind that the most important bottom line for the king's politics, for the monarchs, for the politics of the monarchy, they must not, or at least they must try as least as possible to antagonize people. This is the rule of the game for the monarch everywhere in the world. They must try to avoid controversy. They must try to avoid dissatisfaction from their people, from their subjects, from their people. That's the rule of the game. That's not formal either. That's the kind of rule of the game that people know how to be a monarch. Is he must be, he must be the kind of neutral person for everybody. That's why in most monarchy, under democracy, the principle is that to avoid or to reduce antagonism, to make it least possible, to make it none, to avoid from happening, the monarch must do nothing, must do nothing political, must do nothing controversial, must not involve, completely devoid of politics. That's why that's how the monarchy can meet that kind of demand, can avoid all kind of dissatisfaction. He or she must do nothing political. Then the most satisfaction would be like the gossip, like the British monarchy, the British prince, the British queen got right now. Just trivial gossip, nothing serious. Anything that's serious, especially political, avoid that. Okay? This is still the rule of the game for the Thai monarchy as well. Not the only one, but it's one of them. It's an important rule of the game for the monarchy to survive. So he must avoid blatant interference, especially if that blatant interference in the context of polarization, because no matter what interference, no matter what action he makes, it would satisfy one side, it would make the other side dissatisfied. In that kind of situation, of course, there might be some, like, there must be some kind of unavoidable, he has to interfere, I don't know. But let's say, as long as there is a risk of dissatisfaction, especially to a large number of population, a good monarch, a smart monarch must avoid that. For number two, hyper-royalism may be declined or maybe face uncertainty because of the change of the, because the change of the throne. Yes, I explained a moment ago that royalist democracy goes hand in hand with hyper-royalism. Both, and especially hyper-royalism, rely on the characters of the monarch, the person, that at least, can command respect, can command loyalty. Or if I speak in a kind of nasty term, in a kind of disrespectful term, I would say, in a respectful term, I would say, who can command respect, can command loyalty. In the language of a kind of nasty people who are not quite loyal, I would say, at least his character must be able to sell to people. If the character of the monarch is so flawed, hyper-royalism cannot survive long, possibly collapse. Then royalist democracy cannot survive long, possibly collapse. That's why the changing of the reign right now is so critical to royalist democracy. It's so critical that they have to take action against Thaksin. I say this again, not because I like or I don't like Thaksin. When Thaksin in power, I have to say this. Sorry, a disclaimer. I oppose his abuse of power so many times. I oppose his action for the war on drugs, for the what he did in the South, and many more. I speak today not because I like or I don't like Thaksin, but try to see it as in terms of political trend, in terms of political force. I speak very little about he himself. I hear you, Ajahn, who, not the first one, not the speaker who, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Sorry. Vote buying reduced effect in 1990s, then tax victory, his policy. His policy fits what people in rural sector want. Policy, what we call populist policy, with all the positive and negative effects. I'm not going to support everything he did. No, I'm not. I mean, the effects of so-called populist policy, many things, possibly the economists are correct, but it didn't have effect right away. People didn't see it. Some of them, such as 30 baht, universal health care, that win a lot of vote for him. No matter who was the originator of the ideas, many of them are anti-Thaksin people today. Doesn't matter. But because it was implemented under Thaksin, and many other policies such as the 1 million baht per village and many other things. In general, the so-called populist policy of Thaksin is that he throw a lot of money, and not just money, cash to local people. Opportunity for them to reinvest, entrepreneurially thinking, to reinvest, to make it grow. He brought a lot of funds and cash to a huge sector in the provincial, semi-urban, semi-rural, and rural sector. That's the reason he wins. Mm-hmm. Okay. By the way, I just realized that I tend to shout. If I speak too loud, sorry, because the feeling is that people in the room might not hear me, so it might be a mistake. Sorry. Try to reduce my voice. The simple answer would be, I don't know. That's a simple answer. That's how how to say, I share the anxiety, I share the uncertainty that those royalists have. But I didn't have such an anxiety because I want the royalist democracy to stay on. Because think about it, that kind of democracy which rely on hyper-royalism, sooner or later, it cannot be sustained, right? It cannot be sustained. And the fact in front of us, the fact that Thailand is facing right now is also the evidence that the system itself doesn't work properly when there is a larger demand for participation, who want to bypass the bureaucracy. Because royalist democracy so far rely on centralized bureaucracy, rely on the power of bureaucratic polity, rely, when I say military retreat in the sense that military is no longer dominant. Military become a mechanism under the dominance of the monarchies. So royalist democracy rely on the bureaucratic polity, especially rely on the power of the military under their command. That system cannot tolerate or cannot, sorry, that wrong word, cannot accommodate the larger demand for participation for a larger number of people. That because that system, royalist democracy, which rely on bureaucratic polity, especially military, cannot trust the majority number. The number of the majority is so unpredictable, is untrustworthy. I mean, in the view of the royalists, in the view of the so-called Thai elite today, looking at it one way, they have reasons. Because let's say, like in America, I assume that most people in this room are not supporter of Bush the son, George W. Bush. Bush commit, what do you think about Iraqi war and many other things W. Bush had done? Maybe not positively, right? Yeah, we have to wait. We have to put up with him until he's out of the office. I think Bush have done a much worse than Thaksin himself. Much worse than Thaksin. Somehow, the American people never call for a coup because the majority people vote for Bush to come to power. But Thai royalists and Thai elite, once they know that Thaksin and his people can come to power by elections, they realize that politics by the number cannot be trustworthy for them. They cannot trust the number. They cannot trust the majority. So the question is that system itself cannot accommodate. I mean, the question is that system, and what happens in the future? In my view, the uncertainty for royalist democracy because relating to the uncertainty to the change of the throne should be the signal that this system cannot be sustained forever, sooner or later. And right now, it shows the signs already that the system is not sustainable, is not appropriate for the long-term future, because long-term future is going to become more participatory. Why? Because we cannot change the socio-economic changes back. Whatever changes in the agrarian sector, in Thai socio-economy, cannot change backward. We cannot turn the clock back. Only we change the political system. So I share the anxiety, but I didn't blame the majority who want electoral democracy. My talk since, I don't know when, 2005. Yeah, since 2005, the first talk on this subject. I talk about it's time for royalist democracy to change. The first talk that I mentioned, post-73 democracy. Post-73 democracy, we must go beyond that because it cannot be sustained. Whatever happened today and in the near future, I'm going to say something about cryptic because, not because I'm afraid of the law, but I don't have much time. Whatever happened today and in the near future, in some ways, is similar to the closing years of the reign of King Chulalongkorn and the beginning of King Wachiravut. Absolute monarchy began to crumble under Wachiravut. Dissatisfaction that led to 1932 revolution was primarily dissatisfaction against King Wachiravut, but culminated in the reign of King Pachatipo, one after Wachiravut, but it started from Wachiravut, partly because King Chulalongkorn was so highly revered. Right or wrong, fair or not, that's not my point. The fact is that, I mean, I can be critical to him like I can be critical to the present monarch as well, but that besides the point. The point is that people respect him or hold him in just a high regard to the point that anybody who becomes the next monarch after King Chulalongkorn probably it's impossible for the person after King Chulalongkorn to succeed. In other words, the next king after King Chulalongkorn was doomed to fail even before he became the king. The hole was dug by King Chulalongkorn inadvertently. The next king tried to dig himself out of the hole. The fact is that King Wachiravut, as a monarch, under absolute monarchy, he must be a good leader, not just a ceremonial monarch. No, he must be a capable monarch too. Wachiravut is not competent as a political leader. He's a great artist. He's a great artist. He's a great poet, wonderful poet. He's not a good political leader. He alienated his elders. He alienated the royals who can be his helpers to the point that most of them resigned early on in his reign. Not only he failed to dig out of the hole, he may dig himself deeper into the hole. That's the beginning of the end of absolute monarchy. Think about the present. That's my full stop. Think about it yourself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like the answer to the previous question, in the short term, I don't know. In the short term, it's hard to see, and so many scenarios can happen. In this case, it's like how to say. I would dare to say that I see the long term much clearer than the short term. I can see I can see what will happen, let's say 50 years from now. But I can't see what's going to happen 10 years from now. Why? I think by now many of you maybe see the same thing as me. The trend in the society, you cannot turn the clock backward. I don't mean that democratization or democracy in Thailand would unfold in certain image. I see it clearly. No, I don't see that clearly. But what I see clearly is that political demography, the number of people who participate in political system will increase for sure. I don't see the scenario that turn the clock back, that people can be, let's say, satisfied with limited or no power. No, I don't see. Society will change in the direction that more and more people will demand more participation. Decentralization cannot be stopped. In what forms? That one I don't know. I would dare to say that democratization, in the sense I explained a moment ago, cannot be stopped. It can be interrupted. Yes, it can be interrupted. It can be disrupted. For the next 10 years, it can be disrupted, too bad, possible. It might not happen. It might not be disrupted. It might be disrupted. But the trend in the long term, democracy doesn't happen because my own will, your will, individual wills alone. Yeah, that's an important factor. But it's important because the society grow to the point that people become more aware, educated, informed, aware of their rights, aware of their own benefit. Society grow to the point that it becomes so complex that we cannot reduce the interest of different sector of different individuals to become the same. Society change in the direction of growing number of people who are aware, who want to participate, and the society grow in the direction they become more and more complex. In my view, democracy is not the system that I just like it, so we need to fight for it. It will happen in the sense that we need the kind of society and system that allow people to negotiate, to fight peacefully. We cannot avoid that. Even we try to disrupt that, it will come. Even we try to stop it, it will happen. What particular form of democracy? That one can be varied, can be different from society to society, from time to time. But general trend is that's why I give the long term into 50 years. 50 is not like precise, I just make it up that, let's say long term. It grows that way. That's why the long term it has to change. That kind of long term system, royalist democracy, sooner or later will have to change. One is the answer to previous question. I'm sorry, she just get out of the room a moment ago. I would like to add one more point to the previous answer, which is, part of it to answer the latest one too, is that what is going to happen next? What happened is if let's say military and democracy, we never know. The military under the command of the royalists since 1992 2006. I'm not even sure that since 2006 that we allow the giant out of the lamp, the demon out of the lamp. We allow the ghost, or what we call the demon out of the lamp, Aladdin lamp. I'm not even sure the military will be under the command of the monarchies forever or not. Take only one factor into calculation about the near future. Only one factor, that is the military. Only one factor among many other factors. Only one factor I can't answer the question about the near future because I don't know. I don't know what the military would grow to become. Still under the command royalist, or become more autonomous, become more independent from the power of the monarchies. Don't assume that the military has been like this throughout history. That is not true. Then add another factor, for example, who is the next monarch? That one, I don't want to join all the rumors, the princess or the prince or the baby prince, all kind of prince and princess. I have no idea. All among, let's say, the idea that I agree with a number of people, we try, a number of my friends, mostly academics, we try. I have been trying to speak along this line since 2005, before the coup, is that not because I like Thaksin. No, not at all. Try to play within the rule of the game. Try to keep the system. Try to keep the system. Try to fight within the system. try to let the system grow, try to find the way out within the system, including a lot of, sorry, I shout again, I just realized, I just heard my echo. Including the issue about the next king. I would be willing to ignore the face, the name, the actuality of the heir to the throne. Who is he? I don't care. But if the law said, whoever he is or she is, let follow the law. Don't make a shortcut, make a tricky way in order to get the person who we want. No. The same as Thaksin. If we don't like him, try to get him out according to the rule of the game, not by other means. And he has proved that for 6-7 years, our attempts to try to get rid of him by other means not only fail, but it makes things much worse. That's why I say, in the short term, I have no idea. All I can say that don't try to play outside the rule of the game. Is it funny that right now, sorry, is it funny that right now the government and the red people and people like me who don't call myself as red, but people always say I'm red, that's fine, because I because I don't support royalist democracy, and I support people who want to have their voice heard. I want the electoral democracy. That's it. Isn't it funny that we try to fight for 2007 constitution? Even the 2007 constitution, we were the one who voted no. We vote no in the referendum, right? Because at the time we see that as a way for the royalist democracy to continue. Right now, we try to fight for people to play within that rule. Why? Because that's the rule of the game right now. That's why for one, I support the attempt for the Pheu Thai party to amend the constitution. I have no shame to say that, not because I love every policy they try to do. No, I don't support a lot of policy they try to do, but that one I support them. Try to change, try to play within the rule. No request to the military. No playing by any other rules. No. If we don't like the 2007 constitution, if we prefer 1997 constitution or whatever, play within the rule. The short-term answer, the short-term scenario that we try to advocate is this one. Even though we don't know what's going to happen, we keep saying that play within the rule.